The planet Zenthra shimmered under a sky painted with hues of violet and gold. It was a world far removed from Earth, home to the Zelvians, a species known for their towering intellect and advanced technology. The air buzzed with energy as scholars, scientists, and dignitaries from across the galaxy gathered in the Grand Assembly Hall. This was no ordinary day. Today, they awaited a lecture that had been advertised as one of the most provocative events of the century. Professor Cale Vorn stood backstage, adjusting his robes with meticulous care. His sharp features were framed by sleek silver hair, and his piercing blue eyes carried an air of superiority. Cale was not just any academic, he was revered among his peers for his groundbreaking research on interstellar civilizations. But lately, he had become obsessed with one particular subject, humanity. To him, humans were nothing more than a baffling anomaly, a species that defied logic at every turn. And today he planned to make his disdain crystal clear outside the assembly hall. Two figures walked side by side through the bustling streets of Zenthra's capital city. Daniel Carter, a rugged man in his early 30s, scanned the alien architecture with a mix of awe and discomfort. Beside him, Clara Hayes adjusted her scarf, trying to shield herself from the cool breeze. They were both human representatives of a species often dismissed as primitive by the galactic elite. Their mission here was simple: trade negotiations. But fate seemed determined to pull them into something much larger. Daniel glanced at Clara, noticing the way she craned her neck to take in the sights. "You think these guys will even want what we're selling?" he asked, his voice tinged with skepticism. Clara shrugged. "We won't know unless we try. Besides, it's not like we have a lot of options." Daniel sighed. He knew she was right. Humanity wasn't exactly thriving in the grand scheme of things. Earth was still recovering from centuries of environmental destruction, and its people were struggling to find their place among the stars. Still, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that they didn't belong here, surrounded by beings who viewed them as little more than curiosities. As they approached the Grand Assembly Hall, the crowd thickened. Aliens of all shapes and sizes milled about, their conversations creating a symphony of strange clicks, hums, and tones. Some glanced at Daniel and Clara with curiosity, while others outright ignored them. A few sneered, their expressions making it clear they considered humans unworthy of attention. "Looks like we're late," Clara muttered, checking the time on her wrist device. She tugged at Daniel's arm, urging him toward the entrance. Reluctantly, he followed, weaving through the throng of attendees. Inside the hall, the atmosphere shifted. The vast chamber was filled with rows of seats arranged in concentric circles, each level rising higher than the last. At the center stood a raised platform where Professor Cale Vorn would soon deliver his speech. The room hummed with anticipation. The kind of energy that comes when expectations are high and opinions are polarized. Daniel and Clara found seats near the back, settling in as the lights dimmed. Clara leaned closer to Daniel, whispering, "Do you know what this guy is going to talk about?" Daniel shook his head. "Something about us, probably. You heard the rumors." Clara nodded grimly. Word had spread quickly among the human delegation about Cale's upcoming lecture. Titled Humanity, a species unworthy of galactic recognition, it promised to be a scathing critique of everything human. While some dismissed it as mere posturing, others feared it could damage humanity's already fragile reputation. The murmurs in the hall died down as Cale stepped onto the stage. His presence commanded silence, his tall frame exuding authority. He paused for a moment, letting his gaze sweep over the audience before beginning. "Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues," he began, his voice smooth and confident. "Today, we gather to discuss a topic that has long puzzled scholars and philosophers alike. What is it about humanity that sets them apart, or rather, what fails to set them apart from the rest of the galaxy?" A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. Cale smiled faintly, clearly enjoying the reaction. "Let us consider the facts. Humans live brief lives, their bodies frail and prone to disease. Their emotions cloud their judgment, leading to irrational decisions. They lack the discipline to pursue knowledge for its own sake, instead focusing on fleeting pleasures and material wealth. Daniel clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. Beside him, Clara placed a hand on his arm, silently urging him to stay. Calm. But it was hard to listen to such blatant disrespect without feeling anger rise in your chest, Cale continued, his tone growing more cutting with each sentence. And yet, despite these glaring flaws, humanity persists. They cling to existence, breeding uncontrollably and spreading across their tiny planet like a plague. They dream of greatness but achieve mediocrity. Tell me, why should such a species be granted recognition within our galactic community? The audience erupted into applause, many nodding in agreement. Others exchanged smug glances, clearly pleased with Cale's words. Daniel felt a wave of nausea wash over him. Was this how the rest of the galaxy truly saw them? As failures, as pests? But then something unexpected happened. Amid the clapping and cheering, a single voice called out from the back of the hall, "That's enough!" All eyes turned to the source of the interruption. It was Daniel, standing now, his face flushed with anger. Clara tugged at his sleeve, whispering urgently for him to sit down, but he ignored her. "You don't know anything about us," Daniel said, his voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. "You sit there, judging us from your pedestal, but you haven't lived a single day of our lives. You don't understand what it means to fight for survival, to adapt, to keep going even when everything is against you." Cale raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "Ah, a human speaks. How quaint. Tell me, young man, do you believe your species deserves respect? On what grounds?" Daniel hesitated, unsure how to respond. He wasn't used to being the center of attention, especially not in front of thousands of aliens. But then he thought about Earth, the forests, the oceans, the cities teeming with life. He thought about the countless generations of humans who had faced hardship and overcome it. And he realized he didn't need to justify himself to anyone. "We've survived," Daniel said simply. "Against all odds, we've survived. Maybe we're not perfect, maybe we're not as smart or as strong as you, but we're here. And that counts for something." For a moment there was silence. Then Cale chuckled, shaking his head. "Survival is not enough, human. Survival is meaningless without purpose. Prove to me that your species is capable of more than mere existence. Prove it, and perhaps I'll reconsider my stance." The challenge hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Daniel knew he shouldn't rise to the bait, but something inside him refused to back down. "Fine," he said, "I'll prove it." Cale smirked, clearly confident in his victory. "Very well. Tomorrow you will face a test-a-puzzle designed by the finest minds of my people. If you succeed, I will admit my error. If you fail—" He let the sentence trail off, leaving the implication hanging as the crowd dispersed. Clara pulled Daniel aside. "What are you doing?" she hissed. "You can't seriously think you can beat one of their puzzles. These guys are light years ahead of us." Daniel looked at her, determination burning in his eyes. "Maybe, but I'm not going to let him insult us without fighting back. We faced worse odds before." Clara sighed, knowing there was no changing his mind once he'd made up his mind. All she could do now was hope he knew what he was getting into. Backstage, Cale watched the human duo leave, a satisfied smile playing on his lips. Little did Daniel know, the puzzle awaiting him was designed not just to challenge intelligence, but to break spirits. And Cale was certain that, come tomorrow, the human would crumble under the pressure. Little did Cale realize, however, that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't raw intellect, it's the unyielding will to survive. The next morning, the atmosphere on Zenthro was tense. News of Daniel Carter's challenge to Professor Cale Vorn had spread like wildfire across the city. Aliens from all walks of life gathered outside the Grand Assembly Hall, eager to witness the spectacle. Some came out of curiosity, others out of a desire to see humanity humiliated. The air buzzed with anticipation as spectators filled the chamber, their conversations blending into a cacophony of strange sounds. Daniel stood backstage, his hands trembling slightly despite his outward calm. Clara Hayes hovered nearby, her face etched with worry. She had spent the night trying to talk him out of this, but Daniel's resolve hadn't wavered. Now, as they prepared to step onto the stage, she could only offer quiet support. "You don't have to do this," Clara whispered for what felt like the 100th time. "We can still walk away." Daniel shook his head. "No, we can't. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about proving that we're more than what they think we are." Clara sighed, knowing there was no changing his mind. Instead, she straightened his jacket and gave him a small nod. "Just be careful." As they walked onto the stage, the crowd erupted into murmurs. The aliens stared at Daniel with a mix of amusement and skepticism. To them, he looked like any other human, fragile, ordinary, unremarkable. How could someone like him possibly stand up to the intellectual might of the Zelvians? Professor Cale Vorn awaited them at the center of the stage, his expression smug. Beside him stood a holographic display, its surface shimmering with intricate patterns and glowing symbols. This was the puzzle Daniel would have to solve, a labyrinth of shifting shapes and complex equations designed to test even the brightest minds in the galaxy. "Welcome, everyone," Cale began, his voice dripping with condescension. "Today, we will witness whether humanity is truly capable of rising above its limitations, or if it is doomed to remain forever beneath us." The crowd chuckled, clearly entertained by Cale's words. Daniel ignored them, focusing instead on the task ahead. He stepped forward, his eyes scanning the puzzle before him. At first glance, it seemed impossible, a chaotic swirl of colors and numbers that defied logic. But Daniel had faced chaos before, back on Earth, in places where survival depended on quick thinking and adaptability. Cale gestured toward the hologram. "This puzzle represents the pinnacle of Zelvian intellect. It has stumped countless scholars and thinkers across the galaxy. If you manage to solve it, I will admit my error. But I assure you, human, failure is inevitable." Daniel didn't respond. He took a deep breath, clearing his mind of distractions. Slowly, he reached out and touched the hologram, causing the patterns to shift and rearrange. The audience leaned forward, intrigued despite themselves. They had expected Daniel to falter immediately, but instead he seemed focused. Clara watched anxiously from the sidelines, her heart pounding. She knew Daniel was smart, but this wasn't just about intelligence. The puzzle required a level of reasoning that went beyond anything humans were accustomed to. Still, she couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. If anyone could pull this off, it was Daniel. Hours passed, and the room grew quieter. The initial jeers and laughter faded as the crowd realized Daniel wasn't giving up. He worked methodically, his movements deliberate and precise. Occasionally, he paused to study the patterns, his brow furrowed in concentration. Each time he made progress, the hologram responded, revealing new layers of complexity. Cale paced back and forth, his confidence beginning to waver. He had expected Daniel to crumble within minutes, overwhelmed by the sheer impossibility of the task, yet here he was, hours later, still chipping away at the puzzle. For the first time, doubt crept into Cale's mind. Could this human actually succeed? At one point, Cale stepped forward, unable to contain his frustration. "This is absurd," he snapped. "You must be cheating. No human could possibly make such progress without assistance." Daniel glanced up, his expression calm. "I'm not cheating. You said this was a test of intellect, so let me finish it." The audience murmured, some voicing agreement with Cale, while others began to question his accusations. A few aliens exchanged glances, noticing something unusual about Daniel's approach. Unlike most solvers who relied purely on logic, Daniel seemed to incorporate elements of creativity and intuition. It was an unfamiliar strategy, but it appeared to be working. Clara noticed the change in the crowd's demeanor. "They're starting to doubt him," she whispered to herself. "Keep going, Daniel." Just a little longer. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Daniel reached the final stage of the puzzle. The hologram pulsed brightly, its patterns stabilizing into a coherent design. The room fell silent as Daniel made one last adjustment, his fingers moving with practiced precision. Then, with a soft chime, the puzzle dissolved into a burst of light, signaling completion. For a moment, no one spoke. The audience stared in, Stunned silence, unsure how to react. Cale stood frozen, his face pale with disbelief. He had never imagined this outcome, not in his wildest dreams. Daniel turned to face the crowd, his expression unreadably calm. "I guess humanity isn't as unworthy as you thought," he said simply. The room erupted into applause, though it was hesitant at first. Gradually, the clapping grew louder, more enthusiastic. Some aliens even rose to their feet, impressed by what they had just witnessed. Clara rushed to Daniel's side, tears of relief streaming down her face. "Well done," she said, her voice trembling. "You did it." Cale, however, was far from pleased. His pride was wounded, his reputation tarnished. As the applause continued, he stormed off stage, unwilling to acknowledge his defeat. But the damage was done. For the first time in history, a human had proven himself equal if not superior to the finest minds in the galaxy. Backstage, Daniel and Clara took a moment to collect themselves. The weight of what had just happened was beginning to sink in. They had come to Zenthra as mere traders, representatives of a species often dismissed as insignificant. Now they were heroes, or at least symbols of hope. "I can't believe you pulled that off," Clara said, shaking her head in amazement. "Do you realize what this means? People are going to start seeing us differently now." Daniel nodded, though his expression remained thoughtful. "It's not over yet. Cale won't let this go. He'll find another way to try and prove us." "Wrong." Clara frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, this isn't just about solving a puzzle. It's about respect. And Cale isn't the kind of guy who gives up easily." As if on cue, a messenger approached them. Bearing a message from Cale, the professor demanded a rematch, an even greater challenge, one that would push Daniel to his limits. The terms were clear. Failure would mean public humiliation, but success would force Cale to publicly retract his insults. Daniel read the message, his jaw tightening. He had known this wouldn't end with the puzzle, but he hadn't expected Cale to act so quickly. Still, there was no backing down now, looks like. "We're not done yet," Daniel said, handing the note to Clara. She looked at him, concern etched on her face. "Are you sure about this? You've already proven your point. Why risk everything again?" "Because," Daniel replied, his voice firm, "this isn't just about me. It's about showing everyone, including ourselves, that we're capable of more than they give us credit for." Clara hesitated, then nodded. "All right, but whatever happens next, we face it together." With that, they prepared for the next phase of the challenge. Little did they know, Cale's plan was far more dangerous than either of them could have imagined. The stakes were higher now, and failure would mean more than just embarrassment. It could spell disaster for humanity's standing in the galaxy. But Daniel refused to let fear dictate his actions. He had faced adversity before in the harshest environments Earth had to offer. And if there was one thing he knew, it was that survival wasn't just about strength or intelligence. It was about resilience, the ability to adapt, to persevere, and to keep fighting no matter the odds. As they left the stage, the crowd's cheers echoed behind them. For the first time in a long time, Daniel allowed himself to feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, humanity's future among the stars wasn't as bleak as it seemed. The aftermath of the survival trial left Zenthra buzzing with excitement. Never before had a human captured the attention of the galactic community so completely. Aliens from all corners of the galaxy lined up to meet Daniel, Carter, and Clara. Hayes, eager to learn more about humanity's resilience and ingenuity. For the first time, humans were seen not as inferior or insignificant, but as equals beings, capable of achieving greatness despite their limitations. Daniel and Clara found themselves at the center of this newfound curiosity. They were invited to speak at conferences, attend diplomatic meetings, and even share meals with influential figures from across the galaxy. At every turn, they were met with questions about Earth, its history, and its future. Some aliens marveled at humanity's ability to adapt to harsh environments, while others admired their creativity and determination. It was overwhelming, but also deeply rewarding. Clara, who had always been more reserved than Daniel, began to open up during these interactions. She shared stories of Earth's struggles, how humanity had faced war, famine, and environmental collapse, yet continued to rebuild and strive for something better. Her words resonated with many in the audience, especially those who came from planets that had endured similar hardships. "We're not perfect," she often said, "but we keep trying. That's what makes us special." Daniel, too, embraced his role as an ambassador for humanity. He spoke passionately about the importance of perseverance, teamwork, and hope. His speeches weren't polished or rehearsed, they were raw and heartfelt, drawing on his own experiences surviving in Earth's most unforgiving landscapes. The audience listened intently, captivated by his sincerity. By the end of each talk, there would be applause, followed by long lines of aliens waiting to shake his hand or ask him questions. Yet, amidst the praise and admiration, one figure remained conspicuously absent: Professor Cale Vorn. Since the survival trial, Cale had retreated into seclusion, avoiding public appearances and refusing to acknowledge his defeat. Rumors swirled about his state of mind. Some claimed he was plotting revenge, while others believed he was simply too ashamed to face the crowd. Whatever the truth, his silence only added fuel to the growing respect for Daniel and Clara. Despite their success, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that Cale wasn't finished with them. He knew the professor well enough by now to understand that pride like his wouldn't fade easily. Still, there was little he could do except remain vigilant and prepared for whatever might come next. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of meetings and speeches, Daniel and Clara returned to their quarters. They sat together on a small couch, sipping cups of warm tea provided by their hosts. The room was quiet, save for the soft hum of alien machinery outside. "You've done amazing," Clara said, breaking the silence. "I don't think I've ever seen you so confident." Daniel smiled faintly, though his eyes betrayed a hint of unease. "It feels good to finally be heard. But I can't help thinking, this isn't over yet." Clara frowned. "What do you mean?" "Cale," Daniel replied simply. "He hasn't said a word since the trial. Something tells me he's planning something big." Clara sighed, setting her cup down. "You're probably right, but what can we do? We've already proven ourselves twice, isn't that enough?" "It should be," Daniel admitted. "But people like Cale don't give up easily. If he thinks he has one last shot at humiliating us, he'll take it." Before Clara could respond, a knock sounded at the door. Startled, they exchanged glances before Daniel rose to answer it. Standing in the doorway was a Zelvian messenger, holding a sealed envelope. Without a word, the messenger handed the envelope to Daniel and departed. Curious, Daniel opened it and read the contents aloud. It was a summons and invitation to address the Grand Assembly once more. This time, however, the purpose was different. Cale Vorn had requested permission to deliver a formal apology in front of the entire assembly. The note concluded with a single line: "Truth prevails." Clara blinked in surprise. "An apology? From Cale? Are you sure this isn't some kind of trick?" "I don't know," Daniel admitted, his brow furrowing, "but we can't ignore it. If this is real, it could change everything." The next morning, Daniel and Clara arrived at the Grand Assembly Hall, their nerves taut with anticipation. The chamber was packed, filled with representatives from countless species. Whispers rippled through the crowd as they took their seats near the front. All eyes were on the stage, where Cale Vorn stood waiting, his expression unreadable. When the lights dimmed and the murmurs subsided, Cale stepped forward. Unlike his previous appearances, he carried himself with humility rather than arrogance. His voice, when he spoke, lacked its usual sharpness. "Esteemed colleagues, honored guests," he began, his tone measured. "Today I stand before you not as a scholar or a critic, but as someone who has been humbled by recent events. In my pursuit of knowledge, I allowed prejudice to cloud my judgment. I dismissed humanity as unworthy of recognition, a mistake I deeply regret." The audience fell silent, stunned by Cale's words. No one had expected such a candid admission from the proud professor. Even Daniel and Clara exchanged astonished looks, unsure how to react. "For years I viewed humans as weak and flawed," Cale continued, "but Daniel Carter has shown me otherwise. Through his actions, he has demonstrated qualities that transcend mere intellect qualities like courage, resilience, and adaptability. These are traits we should all aspire to embody. Kale paused, turning to face Daniel directly. To you, Daniel Carter, and to your species, I offer my sincerest apologies. You have earned my respect, and I hope to earn yours in return. The room erupted into applause, louder and more heartfelt than anything Daniel had experienced before. Tears welled in Clara's eyes as she clutched Daniel's hand. For so long they had fought to be seen and heard. Now they had achieved something far greater, acceptance. When the applause died down, Daniel rose to address the crowd. "Thank you, Professor Kale," he began, his voice steady. "Your apology means a lot not just to me but to everyone. Back on Earth, we may not have the technology or resources of other species, but we share one thing in common, the desire to grow, to learn, and to connect." He paused, letting his words sink in. "This isn't the end of our journey, it's just the beginning. Humanity still has much to prove, both to ourselves and to the galaxy. But today I believe we've taken a step in the right direction." The crowd cheered again, their enthusiasm infectious. As Daniel sat down, he felt a profound sense of relief. The weight of proving humanity's worth had lifted, replaced by a renewed sense of purpose. They had faced ridicule, danger, and doubt and emerged stronger for it. Backstage, Kale approached Daniel and Clara after the event. His demeanor was subdued, almost apologetic. "I underestimated you," he said quietly, "and for that I'm truly sorry." Daniel nodded, accepting the gesture. "Apology accepted. Let's move forward, together." As they parted ways, Clara leaned close to Daniel. "Do you think he really means it?" "I think so," Daniel replied. "People can change, given the chance. And maybe, just maybe, this is the start of something bigger." With that, they left the Grand Assembly Hall, ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead. Their journey on Zenthra had transformed them and perhaps the galaxy itself. The days following Daniel's victory over the puzzle were a whirlwind of attention and scrutiny. News of his success spread not only across Zenthra but also to other planets in the galactic network. For the first time, humanity was being talked about, not as a curiosity or an afterthought, but as a species capable of surprising even the most advanced civilizations. Yet, amidst the praise and admiration, there was one voice that refused to be silenced. Professor Kale Vorn. Kale seethed. In private, pacing the confines of his quarters like a caged animal. His reputation had taken a blow, and he couldn't bear the thought of letting it end there. The image of Daniel standing victorious on the stage haunted him, gnawing at his pride. He had underestimated the human, and now he was paying the price. But Kale wasn't the type to accept defeat quietly. No, he would find a way to reclaim his dignity and crush the human who had dared to challenge him. Meanwhile, Daniel and Clara tried to make sense of their newfound fame. They were invited to gatherings, lectures, and discussions where aliens from all corners of the galaxy sought to learn more about humanity. Some were genuinely curious, asking thoughtful questions about Earth's history, culture, and struggles. Others, however, were skeptical, probing for weaknesses or contradictions in Daniel's story. Through it all, Daniel remained calm and composed, answering each question with honesty and humility. Clara marveled at how well Daniel handled the pressure. "You're amazing at this," she told him one evening as they returned to their temporary quarters. "I don't think I could keep my cool under so much attention." Daniel chuckled, though there was a hint of exhaustion in his voice. "It's not easy. But if this is our chance to show them who we really are, then I have to take it." Still, beneath his confident exterior, Daniel felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He knew Kale wouldn't let things rest. The professor's absence from public view only confirmed his suspicions. Whatever Kale was planning, it wouldn't be pleasant. Sure enough, a formal invitation arrived 2 days later. It came stamped with the seal of the Grand Assembly and bore Kale's signature. The message was brief but direct. Daniel was invited to participate in a second challenge, a simulated survival trial designed to test his physical and mental endurance. If he succeeded, Kale promised to publicly apologize and retract his earlier statements about humanity. If he failed, however, the consequences would be severe. Clara read the invitation aloud, her voice tinged with unease. A survival trial? Against virtual predators modeled after Earth's deadliest creatures? This sounds dangerous, Daniel. It is dangerous, Daniel admitted, his expression grim. But I don't have a choice. If I back out now, everything we've worked for will be undone. People will think we're cowards. Clara sighed, knowing he was right. Still, the thought of watching him face such a perilous ordeal filled her with dread. Just promise me you'll be careful. These simulations aren't toys. They're designed to push participants to their limits. I'll be fine, Daniel assured her, though his tone lacked conviction. Deep down, he knew this wouldn't be easy. The trial would require every ounce of skill and determination he possessed. But he also knew that giving up wasn't an option. The day of the trial arrived, and the atmosphere was electric. Thousands of spectators gathered in the arena of trials, a massive domed structure capable of generating lifelike environments. Holographic projections shimmered overhead, displaying images of Earth's harshest landscapes, dense jungles, scorching deserts, icy tundras. At the center of the arena stood a platform where Daniel and Cale would address the crowd before the simulation began. Cale took the stage first, his demeanor calm but smug. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice carrying through the chamber. Today, we witness the ultimate test of humanity's so-called resilience. Daniel Carter has proven himself capable of solving puzzles, but can he survive the very dangers his own planet has created? Let us see if his courage extends beyond words. The audience erupted into cheers and jeers, their excitement palpable. Cale stepped aside, gesturing for Daniel to join him. As Daniel walked onto the platform, he felt the weight of countless eyes upon him. He glanced at Clara, seated in the front row, and gave her a small nod. Her presence steadied him, reminding him why he was doing this. "Thank you," Daniel said, addressing the crowd. His voice was steady, though his heart raced. "I may not be the strongest or the smartest person here, but I know what it means to fight for survival. That's something no simulation can take away from me." The crowd fell silent, struck by the sincerity in his words. Even Cale seemed momentarily taken aback, though he quickly masked his surprise with a dismissive smirk. "We shall see," he muttered under his breath. With that, the trial began. Daniel and Clara were escorted to a control room where technicians explained the rules of the simulation. The environment would shift unpredictably, mimicking Earth's most treacherous regions. Virtual predators modeled after creatures like lions, bears, and venomous snakes would hunt them relentlessly. Their goal was simple: survive until the timer ran out. As the simulation activated, Daniel found himself standing in the middle of a dense jungle. The air was thick with humidity, and the sounds of wildlife echoed around him. Clara appeared beside him, clutching a makeshift spear. "Stay close," Daniel instructed, scanning their surroundings. "We don't know what's out there." Almost immediately, the first predator emerged, a massive holographic tiger with glowing eyes. It prowled toward them, its movements eerily lifelike. Daniel grabbed a nearby branch, using it as a crude weapon. "Distract it," he shouted to Clara. Clara obeyed, waving her spear to draw the tiger's attention. Daniel seized the opportunity, striking the creature from behind with precise timing. The hologram dissolved into sparks, signaling their victory. But there was no time to celebrate. Another predator, a snake-like creature, slithered into view, its fangs dripping with venom. The trial grew increasingly intense as the minutes ticked by. The environment shifted repeatedly, plunging them into freezing snowstorms, scorching deserts, and flooded swamps. Each new challenge tested their endurance, forcing them to adapt quickly. Daniel relied on his instincts, drawing from years of experience navigating Earth's wilderness. Clara, too, proved invaluable, her quick thinking and resourcefulness saving them from disaster more than once throughout the simulation. Cale watched from the control room, his expression growing darker with each passing moment. He had expected Daniel to falter, to succumb to the relentless pressure. Instead, the human thrived. demonstrating a level of ingenuity and teamwork that left even the technicians impressed. Finally, the timer reached 0, signaling the end of the trial. Daniel and Clara collapsed onto the ground, exhausted but triumphant. The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers echoing through the arena. Cale stormed out of the control room, unable to contain his fury. On stage, Daniel addressed the audience once more. "This isn't just about me," he said, his voice strong despite his fatigue. "It's about showing that humanity's strength lies in our ability to adapt, to work together, and to never give up even when the odds are against us." The applause grew louder, and for the first time, Daniel allowed himself to feel a sense of pride. He had faced impossible challenges and emerged victorious not because he was stronger or smarter than anyone else, but because he refused to quit. Behind the scenes, Cale retreated to his quarters, his mind racing. His plan had backfired spectacularly, leaving him humiliated and powerless. Worse still, the audience's perception of humanity had shifted irrevocably. What had once been scorn was now respect and admiration. As Daniel and Clara left the arena, hand in hand, they knew their journey was far from over. They had proven themselves to the galaxy, but the road ahead would still be fraught with challenges. Yet, for the first time in a long time, they felt hopeful. Humanity's place among the stars might not be secure, but it was undeniable, and that was enough for now. The days following Cale Vaughn's apology marked a turning point, not just for Daniel Carter and Clara Hayes, but for humanity as a whole. News of the professor's public admission spread rapidly across the galaxy, sparking debates and discussions on countless planets. For the first time, humanity was being viewed not as an anomaly or a curiosity, but as a species with unique strengths and potential. The ripple effects of Daniel and Clara's actions were felt far beyond Zenthra, opening doors that had long been closed to humans. Back on the planet, life began to settle into a new rhythm. Daniel and Clara continued to engage with the galactic community, attending meetings, sharing stories, and building connections. Their presence inspired others, both humans and aliens, to reconsider preconceived notions about what it meant to be intelligent, capable, or worthy. Aliens who had once dismissed Earth as insignificant now expressed interest in learning more about its people, culture, and history. Clara found herself drawn to these interactions, her natural curiosity shining through. She spent hours talking with scholars, scientists, and diplomats, exchanging ideas and perspectives. One evening, during a dinner hosted by a group of interstellar traders, she shared a story about Earth's oceans, their beauty, their mysteries, and the challenges they faced due to pollution and climate change. Her words struck a chord with the audience, many of whom came from water-rich planets. "We've made mistakes," Clara admitted, her voice soft but steady. "But we're working to fix them. Every day, people back home are finding ways to heal our planet, even when it feels impossible. That's something I think we can all learn from." Her speech earned applause, but more importantly, it sparked meaningful conversations. Some aliens offered technological solutions, while others proposed collaborative efforts to address environmental issues on both Earth and other planets. It was a reminder that progress often began with understanding, and understanding required listening. Daniel, meanwhile, focused on fostering trust and cooperation. He became a bridge between humanity and the galactic community, advocating for mutual respect and shared goals. His experiences navigating Earth's harshest environments gave him insights that resonated deeply with alien species facing similar challenges. During one particularly memorable discussion, he spoke about the importance of resilience, not just as individuals, but as communities. "When things get tough, you don't give up," Daniel said, addressing a room full of engineers and architects. "You adapt. You find new ways to solve problems, even if those solutions seem unconventional. That's how we survive, not by being perfect, but by refusing to quit." His words resonated with his audience, inspiring fresh approaches to age-old problems. Slowly but surely, humanity's reputation shifted from one of weakness to one of strength, a testament to the power of perseverance and creativity. Despite their successes, Daniel and Clara remained cautious. They knew that change wasn't instantaneous. Old prejudices die hard, and there would always be those who doubted humanity's place among the stars. Still, they took comfort in knowing they had planted seeds of hope, seeds that might one day grow into something extraordinary. One afternoon, as they prepared to leave Zenthra, they received an unexpected visitor. Professor Cale Vorn, the once arrogant academic, approached them with a humility that seemed genuine. Gone was the smugness that had defined him. In its place was a quiet sincerity. "I wanted to thank you," Cale said, his voice steady. "Your actions have forced me to confront my own biases, not just about humanity, but about myself. I see now that intelligence isn't the only measure of worth. Sometimes the greatest wisdom comes from simply listening." Daniel extended his hand, which Cale shook firmly. "Thank you for saying that. It takes courage to admit when you're wrong." Cale nodded, glancing at Clara. "You've both accomplished something remarkable here. I hope you continue to inspire others as you've inspired me." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Daniel and Clara to reflect on his words. Though they couldn't be certain whether Cale's transformation was permanent, they chose to believe in the possibility of change for him, and for others like him. As their ship lifted off from Zenthra's surface, Daniel and Clara gazed out the window at the shimmering planet below. The journey ahead would undoubtedly be filled with challenges, but they faced it with renewed optimism. Humanity's future among the stars was no longer a distant dream, it was a tangible reality, shaped by their courage and determination. Clara broke the silence first. "Do you think we'll ever come back here?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Maybe, but wherever we go next, we'll carry this experience with us. We've shown the galaxy what we're capable of. Now it's up to everyone else to decide what comes next." Their ship soared higher, leaving Zenthra behind. Below them, the planet faded into the vast expanse of space, a reminder of how small yet significant humanity truly was. They had proven that survival wasn't just about enduring hardship. It was about finding strength in vulnerability, unity in diversity, and hope in uncertainty. And so, as they set course for Earth, Daniel and Clara carried with them not just memories of triumph, but also a promise to keep pushing forward, to keep fighting for a better future, and to never stop believing in the potential of humanity. In the end, their story was more than just a tale of two humans challenging the status quo. It was a testament to the power of resilience, adaptability, and the unyielding spirit of a species determined to carve its place among the stars.